Hey, Matt, thanks for coming on the Simple Pin podcast.
Thank you for having me. It's awesome to be here.
Yeah, I know as all good podcasts, there's like so much talking before the episode, and you're like, okay, I feel like we need to hit record. So here we go. Tell us who you are and what you do.
Yeah, my name is Matt Briel. My official title is I am the VP of Marketing and Communications at Lulu.com. Although that title doesn't really serve me much these days. I'm usually found helping, creators, content entrepreneurs try to, better monetize their content. So I'm spending a lot of time at conferences, at events, doing interviews, things like this, anywhere I can get out there and connect with content creators to try and help them monetize their content in a way that makes more sense to them than just like we talked about ads and things. The rest of what I do at Lulu is really I work with my marketing team. I have a pretty large team of marketers, and we work to better educate people on how to use self-publishing for themselves and their businesses to publish their content and get it out there in the world in whatever way makes sense for them. And to achieve whatever goals they want to achieve with that content. For some people, they just want to make money with it, and that's great. And others are really doing it for some other reason to get their content into a larger audience or advance themselves in some other way. So we really serve as kind of the hub of education for helping people get through the self-publishing process, how to use Lulu, and then how to advance beyond just publishing a book.
Yeah, because it feels like before I came across Lulu, I felt like you had to do a ton of Google searching. You had to talk to people. You had to really do boots on the ground work for like 6 months to even find anything that felt like it was viable or,
Yeah,
even an option. So let's back up a little bit too. Like, who is Lulu? Like, what is
sure.
Lulu? And kind of how did it even come to be?
Yeah. I love this question because people are sometimes a little taken aback by the answer, or at least our genesis. We weren't started like some of the other self-publishing companies, by an author or somebody like that per se. We were actually started by a gentleman named Bob Young, who was the original co-founder of Red Hat, which was a software company, basically. Um, he took that company to a very successful IPO way back in the day, one of the biggest at that time for a
Mhm.
technology company. And so he had all this money and all this time, and people really wanted to hear his story. And so he thought he would write a book. He thought it'd be easy to get a publisher to pick it up because he just had this huge windfall. Um, that was not the case. And so he just figured, you know what? If it's this hard for me, somebody with all this privilege to get my story published, when people are clearly asking for it, I can't imagine how hard it is for everybody else. So he decided, having the technology background, he would start an online self-publishing company, which is what he did. So in 2002, 22 years ago, Lulu was founded as pretty much, I think, legitimately the first online self-publishing company
Wow.
at that time. Um, Amazon didn't really enter the picture until many years later. But fast forward, and we're still here in the spirit of how we were founded by a technology, entrepreneur, because that's how Bob would identify or self-identifies as an entrepreneur first, or serial entrepreneur, if you ask him, and secondarily as a tech lover, as a geek of technology. And so that spirit carries through to today, which is how we come to develop a lot of the first tools available for authors and creators to sell their products direct and to do some of the really cool things they can do in an automated fashion. We just keep investing in innovation and technology in our space. We approach everything sort of from that lens versus the lens of, oh, we're a bunch of authors and we just need to figure out better ways to publish.
Mm.
We're really coming at it first from that idea of how do we innovate and make these tools easier and more intuitive for people. As you referred to, this can be a sort of a daunting area to try and step into if you don't know anything about it. But so yeah, 2002, we were the first. We approach it from a technology standpoint first. And that's really how we try to bring things to market to make it easier for people to self-publish.
Well, and you mentioned we were talking before the podcast that the last 18 months to probably 2 years, you've really started to lean into content creators.
Yes.
Why was that? How did that come about going from, he wanted to tell his story in a traditional book and kind of get that out
Yes.
there. I'm assuming it was pursuant of authors. Why the switch to content creators?
Yeah, from an audience standpoint, switching from, or I should say refocusing is probably a better word, but Yeah, the traditional focus for any publishing company or self-publishing company is typically on fiction authors, right?
Mm.
Your marketing team will go out there and you got to find all the places where fiction authors are hanging out, and you want to get them to use your platform, and that's all fine and good. But at the end of the day, to potentially ignore the wave of content creators that really sort of hit the scene, I'd say right around the time everybody started locking down for COVID. Um, everybody really started jumping into this pool of content creation and really trying to understand, like, okay, I just got laid off. I'm in lockdown. Like, I can't leave my house for the
Mm.
most part. Like, what can I do to generate some income and just not go crazy sitting in my house with my 5 kids, 6 dogs, and crazy neighbors that I don't even like, right? So, you have more content creation happening, and obviously then you have more content hitting the market in one way or another, whether that's just through more YouTube videos being created, more podcasts flooding, Spotify and Apple, more blogs appearing in search results about particular topics or whatever that might be. um, and then, as those lockdowns kind of sort of relaxed and people started getting out there again, uh, all of a sudden you see these reports popping up by, Andreessen and all these other investors, like, oh, the creator economy is so huge and there's all these creators. And, so we're paying attention to that and we're seeing that there is this influx of content that's out there. But the problem that we see, the only way people were able to really sort of figure out monetizing that content was just through whatever their platforms provided them, usually through some sort of ads, revenue share, things like that. And those were usually fractions of a penny on the dollar. So, if you were just starting out, didn't matter how good your content was. If your audience wasn't large enough, you weren't making much money, if any at all, from the content you were producing or creating. So we started seeing that. We started talking to some creators. Many of them came to us organically. And so when we would find them in our system, which was pretty quickly, by the way, because what would happen is you'd have a creator come to Lulu who had a large audience, and immediately books are just selling like crazy. So, of course, we're
Mm.
like, who's this? What are they doing? We realized, okay, there's this whole audience out there of people who are creating this super cool content, and they don't have a solid way to monetize it. And then you have a few who are breaking through and figuring it out. And so based on that, doing some of our own research and really just getting out there and talking to other creators, we realized this is a largely underserved audience and population. We can bring to them the tools and things they can use to monetize their content in a way that's not only, I would say, better for their platform, for
Mm.
them as a brand, not the platform they're actually on. That's actually the bad part. But for them as a brand, because what eventually happens is, and many of you have seen this, is that you put all this time and effort into growing your audience on, let's say, Twitter, or sorry, X.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
then, real world happens, and
Hmm.
some eccentric billionaire buys it. And now all that time that you spent to build that audience, for a lot of people anyways, you wake up the next morning and it's basically gone, and your
Yeah.
monetization is gone, and you have no idea what to do, and you had no way to retain that audience or even that content. You don't own it. So uh, using a book or monetizing your content through written form, that's a way for you to own that content. Nobody can really take that away from you. You can control from start to finish how one of your fans or followers or customers purchases that and engages with you with that content. And it just became obvious. And so at that point, we just realized we need to find more ways to reach these audiences. And that's what we did.
Yeah, and I think when I was at the ConvertKit conference in June of 22, we
Mm-hmm.
kind of sidled over to your table because I think the person I was with, you had great stickers. So she was like, "Let's go there." And then to see the examples that you had of creators who had turned in either planners or small ebook, or well, not an ebook, an actually physical book, and then to do other books was like, it was kind of like a mind-blowing experience to say, "Oh, this is possible," because I've only ever heard of it as traditional publishing, or like you said, a little bit of like Amazon. But as I think I was talking to Lolly and she was explaining everything to me, and I thought, this sounds so easy. Like, what's the catch? Like,
Yeah.
there's got to be like a hidden catch in this. So, I guess walk me through like an example. So, I'm that new person that comes up to the table. I've been creating content now for 5 to 6 years. I am the revenue model, like the rev share and the affiliates. And let's say I have all these like amazing DIY kind of tutorials,
Mhm.
maybe around like gardening or something like that. If I was to come up to that table and be like, how can I even take what I'm doing? Like, what's a great example that you would throw out for somebody in that situation to kind of have that mind blown effect that they
Yeah,
can even convert it into something else?
yeah. At that exact conference, by the way, Craft and Commerce, where we met you, um, I'll give you another example from there. Somebody
Yeah.
you may have ran into. I won't say her name, um, but online you can find her if you look up Sweet Red Poppy.
Okay.
Um, so she has a business or a business model, and where the content that she was creating was primarily YouTube videos, and it was basically showing people how to use those. They're like Cricut machines, I think
Oh,
they're
yeah.
called.
The stencils.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I think the gist of what she was doing was showing people how to create really cool, I think, patterns or things like that to use in quilting and other crafting types
Mm,
of activities. So definitely not something you would traditionally think of as a viable content structure for a printed book.
right.
But I will tell you that one way or another, well, not one way or another, her and her husband, they found Lulu through some of our marketing efforts. And what they did, all on their own is they figured out, well, all of these patterns and things that she's showing people how to do on her YouTube videos, which are getting hundreds of thousands of views. I mean, she's got a great following at this point. She needs a better way to monetize it. They put those into spiral bound,
Mm,
coil bound workbooks, which is very similar to what you did, right?
yep.
Or notebooks and workbooks. So and the way we found her was, again, she was one of the ones I mentioned earlier, where all of a sudden we have this entity that signs on to Lulu and starts using our Shopify plugin. So again, creates the book, the project on Lulu, and then plugs right into their Shopify store. And so all these orders are coming through, and as we are looking and researching the account, we're like, holy crap, this is somebody who's creating workbooks and stencil books on for Cricut machines and things. You know what I mean? Like, this is amazing. And I mean, when I tell you she moved some units in the first year or two that she was with us, she moved some units.
Wow.
um and so again, I think the answer to your question is, with her example, it's there's just about any content that you could turn into a book. What kind of book is the question? And we'll take you for example. You have a workbook slash notebook type of product that goes along with what you do in correlation to Pinterest and marketing and things like that. That's one of the most popular right now, right? Because if this is your first foray into creating a printed product for the purposes of creating some passive streams of revenue and sort of enhancing your content model, that's a real easy one. We even provide templates on our site to give you like the beginnings of an internal notebook if you need it. But if I'm, again, let's forget about the maker creator, like the one we just talked about. But let's say I'm more in line with what you do, more in that vein of marketing and a particular platform, and I'm out there educating people on how to better use this platform, right? That's being underused and that people don't understand. Um, this idea that I would create a workbook is perfect for me, right? It's pretty easy, like you said. I'm just going to create, a workbook that's going to help people through, creating campaigns or doing all these things. And, you take that out there to your audience. The price points can be relatively low, and you just build from there. And using our plugins, it's especially easy because you can
Yeah.
just plug into your Shopify store or your website or whatever you're using. And every time one of your followers buys the book, the order just gets transmitted to us and we print it and ship it, and we'll white label it for your brand if you want. So you really don't, once you create the actual book on our platform and obviously get a test copy to look at it and make sure you're happy with it, after that, you really don't have to touch anything. And that makes it really easy for you to go back to focusing on content, building your audience, and then figuring out what your next product is going to be. And based on the success or lack thereof of that particular, let's say, notebook or journal product that you created, you figure out from there which direction you want to go in. So again, we work with podcasters and YouTubers and creator makers and small business owners, and we have just found there's really no cap on what kind of content can be turned into a book, which is super cool.
Yeah.
It really is just a matter of finding those people, helping them understand how to do it.
Yeah, I would agree. And I think even as you're talking, I'm realizing like for us, for years, we had had our planner and we kept saying, oh, go to Office Depot, get it printed, get it bound, and then you can have it. Cause we knew that people people were asking us like, well, how do I print it? I want it off my computer because I'm not digitally focused. I want an actual printed copy. So that's
Yeah.
what we told people for years. And then when, that conference, Craft and Commerce came across, it was like, oh, this solves this problem actually
Yeah.
for our audience that they're already having. So I think even for people listening to pay attention to where people are already asking you to print something, that's a huge like market right there, because then you're eliminating the time they have to spend to go get it, to upload it to Office Depot or wherever it is. And
Which
then
is
what
so much fun, by the way.
Oh my gosh, I know. I'm like, where do I go again? Is Staples still around? Like, I have no idea. And I would say too, one thing that I love is that, we're creating in Canva and then we're kind of pulling it over, but there's things we miss, right? Like there's
Sure.
things we need to update, or we get feedback from our audience. I like that it's easy to update in Canva and then upload it. There's not this huge thing like, oh, I just printed 100 copies. They're now being shipped to me that I have to store in my garage, and they
Yeah.
have this mistake. Like it's very agile in that sense and very forgiving, which
Yep.
is incredible. Like,
Yeah, we have a whole side of our business that is dominated by the academic world, and that's a big reason why they use somebody like us or another self-publishing. Because when you have professors who are now allowed to create their own textbooks, for example, and maybe they're teaching a course on digital marketing, well, we all know the minute you publish that textbook on digital marketing, it's out of date. So the ability to just go right back to that file on Lulu, for your next semester's class and change every instance of the word Twitter to the word X, right?
mhm,
And then just there you go. The next class will get an updated version, easy peasy. You don't have to. You're 100% right. Whereas years and years ago, if you weren't using self-publishing, and even now if you're not using self-publishing, um, you're buying x amount of copies up front, and people will still do that because they think they want that price break, because you'll
right.
get a price break. Like the difference between somebody buying your planner directly from you, at the price point that you have it, which covers your manufacturing cost from us and then a little bit for yourself. If you were to order those planners overseas from an offset printer, you would get a cheaper price from them, which means you could probably sell it for $1 or $2 cheaper to your end customer. But the problem is, like you just said, you have to order a minimum of probably 2,000 units.
Yep.
Those pallets are going to sit in your garage. You have to ship them out. And then the minute something gets outdated in that planner, you just found yourself with a whole lot of like firewood starter for next winter, like, or hopefully you recycle it, but you know what I mean?
Yes.
You're 100% right. I mean, um, self-publishing, especially when coupled with print on demand, really does solve a lot of problems. And these days is so much more environmentally friendly.
Yes.
So yeah, yeah.
Yeah, no, that's great. Okay, so for somebody who's listening and they're like, their mind is now blowing and they're like, okay, this is amazing. Um, what would you like? I'm trying to think of like the lowest barrier to entry. Like, if they're going to try something, is there a good price point that they try with? Is, that all dependent again on how long their particular book is or notebook or whatever? What would you kind of to wade into the waters? What would you tell them to just to start with?
Yeah, I think this one may be slightly dependent on the type of content you're creating, but let's just say you just really want to try this out. Like this is strictly an experiment. And the content doesn't necessarily matter. You just want to give the platform a go and try to figure it out. I would say, come onto our site. We have a place where you can download free notebook interiors, like literally lined notebook interiors, or, graph paper interiors. We'll give you 100-page interior file of lined or graph or dot journal or whatever, right? So you'll now have the interior file. That's half the work right there. As you can attest to,
Hmm.
creating an interior file is probably the hardest of what you do. Um, and then, use our cover tool generator on the site. You'll just take that interior file, you'll create your own cover, which have some fun with that, and then buy a copy of it. So pay attention to what you're doing. You can choose black and white interior to keep the cost low. Obviously, your cover will be full color if you want to do it that way. Purchase a copy, get it in your hands, take a look at it, and then figure out, okay, I could do this. I just did it. Now, how do I apply this to my business? 9 times out of 10, the notebook you create just to try this process out is only going to be a couple of bucks. If you are one of those people that's listening that already has an interior file or a manuscript you've been working on, or maybe you just finished it and you really want to do that, great. That's fine. Bring it over to our site. We have plenty of resources that'll show you how to, if you haven't already, save it as a flattened PDF file, upload that, and then you can create a cover and again, give it a shot. But for us, when people ask us, like, what's the easiest way to try this out? We just say, come to our site, get a free downloadable notebook interior file. Worst case scenario at the end of this experiment is you've got a notebook to write in. And
Yeah,
maybe you didn't
true.
like the process or you decided, you know what, I'm just not going to deal with this right now. But just like you and many others, we're confident that if you're truly looking for ways to monetize your content that will give you the benefits of self-reliance and not relying on third-party platforms and all these other things, you'll get through that process. It's easy. You'll see the benefits there, and hopefully you'll follow it through to connecting it to a website that you hopefully already have. And if you
Right.
don't, here's your call to go ahead and get one or get a Shopify page or something. But yeah, I think
Hmm.
the easiest way and what we tell people is just get that free interior file that we'll let you download for free. Have fun creating a cover, put it all together, which again, you've seen it. It walks you right through
Yep.
creating that book. Well, now you're doing yours in Canva too, so it's a
Yeah.
slightly different process, but it's really not that hard. And once you figure out the steps to get through it, the rest is a breeze. You'll be creating books left and right, and you'd be amazed at what people would actually buy from you when you put it into written content. I mean, a lot of people, especially if you do online courses, for example,
Mm.
um, the one thing people don't want from you is another crappy ebook or a
Yeah.
downloadable PDF that they have to use on their laptop. Like you said, it's not, if you're doing anything that's educational in nature, 9 times out of 10, people want something they can write in. They want
Yep.
something that when that online course is done, or when they've finished with your mastermind class, or whatever that is that you're the core of what your content sales is, they're going to have that. It's going to be there on their desk. It's going to be there on their bookshelf. It'll be in their backpack whenever they're traveling. They'll want that to have to go back to time and time again. And when you provide the kind of value that a lot of creators do, like yourself, where you're educating people on how to be better at a platform or a tactic or something like that, there's nothing better than having that physical, tangible notebook, planner, journal, regular book in your hand. Like regular books, I highlight the crap out of those things.
Yep.
Pages are dog-eared. Like if a book has value for me, that thing is well used and I keep it on my desk or my bookshelf. So,
Yeah.
I just think it's a superior product. If you can get through that process, have fun creating a notebook or a journal real quick, I think
Hmm.
you're going to see there's a lot of new opportunities that open up for you from there.
Right, and then you don't have the pallets in your garage. So there's that.
Yes.
Okay, so one a question I know that I asked when I first met y'all was, do you have resources for people who are editors or proofers or people that you can at least like direct people to if they are writing a traditional book and not something like a planner?
Yeah, absolutely. The beauty of this sort of, I'd say, creator renaissance that's happening is that a lot of people are finding themselves very successful at pushing their content and monetizing it to a degree, whether that's through online courses or speaking gigs or whatever. And so, some of them, they have a little more money than they do time, which is
Hmm.
great. So you want to pay somebody to help you put this book together. If you're going to do a traditional book, let's say you're going to write a book about, digital marketing in the 2024. Terrible idea, but if you're going to do that, you
Yes.
should have an editor.
Yep, you should.
If you're not very creative when it comes to graphic design, you should probably hire somebody to help you create a cool cover. um, and yeah, we absolutely have those resources. So we have a spot on our site where, I think it's called Hire a Pro, where we list a lot of vendors that we've partnered with or we've vetted. They're freelance graphic designers, freelance editors, formatters, proofreaders, um, all of those types of resources that you might want to contract with to do some of that work for you. You can absolutely find it on our site.
I love that. Matt, this has been so helpful. And in fact, as we've been talking, I'm like, okay, what else can we turn into a book? Because, like the Shopify integration is so smooth and slick for us. That's where we have our Simple Pen Planner over there. And we have still both a digital copy and a printed copy, and it's updated every year. But thinking about all the other things that we have too, based on knowing, people do want a physical copy when they're going through things tons of our small products. And I think even with transcription services now happening for podcasts and videos, it
Yeah.
makes it even easier to pull down that content and at least get it somewhere
Yep.
and evaluate it and then say, okay, maybe I can turn this into an actual book or a planner or a guide or whatever. It's just, I mean, like I said, that was kind of how I felt when I first met y'all, was this is possible. Like, people do this and they make it easier for content creators to do this.
Yeah.
So I'm excited about that. I'm excited for people to try it. And everyone listening, there's a link below in the podcast app. Just click on that and go create your free account and just test it out. Like Matt said, with the planner, the journal, whatever it is, you can create stuff for your kids. I
That's
mean,
true. Yeah.
you could do gifts. You can really, there's a lot of things you could do.
We've actually got a bunch of blog articles that we've created too that breaks it down per medium. So there's a blog article, if you're a podcaster, that will walk you through the best way to create a book from your content. And that's as simple as, okay, my top three, downloaded podcasts were these three. Is there a common theme between those three? If so, that becomes the theme that you weave through your book. You take those three podcasts, like you said, you download the transcripts for those three podcasts, drop those things into chat gpt, tell it to give you an outline for a book based off these three transcripts, and before you know it, you've got an outline for a whole book staring at you right there.
Yeah.
Take that outline, again, using something like chat gpt for a little bit of help, then you just start going through the chapters. Chances are you've already got the content for most of those chapters. It's sitting in other transcripts of your podcast. Pull the transcript down, there's another chapter. Then go through, clean it up, hand it off to an editor. You're off to the races. And we have articles that'll walk podcasters through that, YouTubers and video creators, bloggers. I mean, you name it. There's an article on our blog that'll help you get through those things that you just mentioned. So, again, even after listening to this, if you're like, well, yeah, but my YouTube channel, trust me, just go get the article, read it. At the end of
Yes.
that article will also be resources that'll help you get it into the format of a book. So it is possible. People are more and more figuring that out, which is really cool.
Yeah, I love that. Well, thanks, Matt. I love it. And I hope people go check out Lulu again below. It is in your podcast app. Here, go create a free account, play around with it. And thanks, Matt. We really appreciate all of the history, the knowledge, and the push to go create our own self published product.
Thanks, Kate. I appreciate it.